right spot. Mark's with me today too. I'm going to call him up in just a bit. But basically, I'm going to talk for I don't know, 30, 40 minutes or so, and then we jump into a Q&A session. So thanks for coming. Before we get started, give me an idea of kind of who's here. So who here went on the tour? A bunch of you, most of you. Good, all right. So I'm not going to talk as much about Capital Factory because you just heard all about Capital Factory. Anybody here already a CF member? Awesome. Did I just meet you guys yesterday? You're visiting from? Okay, awesome. Who went to South by this year? A bunch of you. Anybody who's never been to South by?
Well, before this year.
Before this year, yeah. Cool. Anybody go to UT? Recently moved here? Like in the past year? Not pretty common for people that are here. Anybody born here? Nobody. Usually there's one, but it's pretty rare. It's rare. Nobody's born here. Anybody looking for a job? What kind of job? What do you do?
Creative content and content marketing.
Do you write?
Yeah.
All right, good to know. What about you?
Well, I'm about to graduate, finance major, so looking business space during summer.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we got lots of opportunities here. We'll talk a little about that. Anybody looking for investors for their startup? Nobody. Wow, that's weird. Okay. Normally everybody's looking for investors. And who's the founder of a startup? A couple of you. Okay, awesome. Great. That helps me. Who do you want to meet? Tell me. Why? Like usually people are here because they want to meet people. That's usually like what they need to move their thing forward. They need to meet. Like I said, investors is one of it. Sometimes they're trying to hire people. Sometimes they need to meet certain kinds of like people at certain companies. Who do you guys want to meet?
For me, so I recently moved here from Las Vegas, and we have a pretty small and tight startup community. And when companies would raise capital or grow to a certain point, they'd have to move because there's no talent there.
Yeah.
And what that has caused is I've grown my companies really remote or small core teams and remote. And
So who do you want to meet?
sorry, so like people more towards Series B levels.
Investors
the
or
next level, more like
or people that have done that
entrepreneurs
before?
and work.
Oh yeah, awesome. Well, it's like not maybe you might call mentors, advisors, friends, whatever, but people that have built those kinds of companies.
Yeah.
Cool. There's lots of those in Austin in here.
So I have a startup and it's just me right now, so I'm just trying to kind of meet people who are either willing to join or help out in any sort of way, or maybe know other people who might be willing to.
Co-founders, awesome. Really good reason to be here.
Besides meeting people, like-minded people, I'd love to meet small business owners who would have opportunities for students to do job shadowing experiences with them, because that's a lot of what my company is. And a lot of the students are rural students, so I think tech is a great opportunity to do virtual job shadowing.
Awesome. There's a startup at UT called College Hustle, helping college kids get jobs. I don't know if
This
that
is for high
like
schoolers,
Oh,
actually.
yeah, this is other direction. Okay.
Look for new businesses, new ideas, co-founder.
Awesome. Right spot.
I want to meet innovative companies who need help telling their story.
Right. All right. Cool.
Okay, before you cut it off, I've done, I have a new idea I'm gonna work on, so I'm kind of looking for someone to help me get the overall roadmap of the whole process from Series A all the way up to, going live with the product. It's online and app based, so it's kind of a new realm for me, but I want someone to kind of show me the overall 30,000 square foot or 30,000 foot picture.
Yeah. That's probably not one person, but yes, this is the right. They're surrounded by people that can do stuff like that.
And then also tech co-founder, eventually when we're a little bit further down the road.
Cool. All right, that's great. That's great. That'll help me tailor what I say to what you want to do. If you get to know me, you'll know that that's really all I'm about. Like I'm all about connecting people together. That's what I get a lot of personal satisfaction out of it, and I feel like I'm pretty good at it. And so that's what this place is all about. And usually most people that come here because they're looking for somebody. They're looking for a co-founder or people that can help them or people that can hire, things like that. Because in the end, most problems are people problems. So what we're going to talk about today is Texas and Austin, why we're here. I'm going to give a little Austin history lesson. This is just my version of history. Everybody has their own version of history. And then I'll briefly talk about Capital Factory. It sounds like most of you went on the tour, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. UT Austin, that's a pretty important part of the startup scene in Austin. South by Southwest, that's a really important part of it. The new thing on my deck this year, Army Futures Command, the defense innovation community that's here now in Austin. And then I'm gonna invite Mark up here and we'll do an Ask Me Anything session. So we'll be able to answer your questions, talk about anything you want to, whether it's about your startup or about Austin or about fundraising, about Capital Factory, about lots of different things. So what we won't cover, things that happen other places. So we do a lot of things on a really regular schedule. This is the second Tuesday of the month, which is when we do the intro to the Austin startup scene. First Tuesday of the month is an intro to fundraising. That's another thing a lot of people have questions about, so it's very specifically tailored to, let's talk about how do you, and really just the basics of who do you need to meet and things like that. But just like this format, every one of these things we do, one, we talk about it a little bit, but then I have somebody else up here. And so at the intro to fundraising, it's always a different venture capitalist, and it's all the top VCs in town. And so every month there's a different one of them up here on stage answering questions. Just like every month there's a different person like Mark, who's not a VC, but he's a community leader and super plugged in and organizes lots of stuff. And if you want to know who to know, like Mark's the kind of guy you want to ask, and so that's why he's here. And so the second Tuesday, we do sessions on how to get plugged in as a mentor here. Right now, the intro to the Austin startup scene. On the third Tuesday of the month, every month, we do a road trip. It's mostly our members, but people have crashed it before. We rent a big bus every month, and we go to either Dallas or Houston or San Antonio. And we fill it up full of entrepreneurs and investors, and we go there for the day and meet up with entrepreneurs and investors and people over there. And it's just like a massive series of programming and speed dating. And it actually really works. We've had a lot of companies meet investors that way. And investments happen. And so that's part of our Texas Manifesto that I'll talk about. Also what's happening in the city those days when we're on the road is Founder Stories, which is having our mentors, some of the most experienced entrepreneurs and most interesting people here, get up and tell their stories in a way where you can go ask them questions and things like that too. And then the fourth Tuesday, if this is still happening, this was happening, I don't know, I think this may have gotten paused, but is Open Pitch Pizza. And that's the idea that if you're pitching your startup anywhere, whether you're gonna go pitch at some demo day or you're gonna pitch on, for another accelerator or anything like that, you can come practice. People will give you feedback, and so that's once a month for that. Other stuff, if you're really if you want to learn more about startups, one of the best things I can recommend is the Founders Academy, which my partner Gordon Doherty puts on. He does it once a quarter, and you can attend in person or you can do it over video. In addition to the session he does in person, and he's awesome. He has been, for years, he's been developing this whole video series, and so if you do the class in person, you get all the videos for free, and there's like dozens of hours more videos and stuff like that too. So he's fantastic, he's really great, just can't recommend that enough. That's just foundersacademy.eventbrite.com. Some other quick tips, if you want just some of the other things again, I'm not going to cover, this link, bit.ly plug into ATX startup scene. It's like a top 10 list of like do this, do this, do this, do this. And it's literally like go follow these people on Twitter, sign up for this email list, go to this meetup, attend this hackathon, do all these different things, and you will be plugged in. You'll know what's going on here. And it probably could use a refresh, but it's still pretty good. That's another helpful thing to go check out. The things that are happening here at Capital Factory, like this event right now, is being streamed over the internet. There's a camera on the ceiling right there, they all get recorded and streamed. And so all the events that happen here get recorded and streamed, and there's like a dozen events happening here every day. So if you go to austintechlive.com, it's a YouTube channel, and you can see all the different things that have been happening here. So even if you can't attend in person, like I can't come to all the things here, but a lot of times I'll be at home and I'll actually throw up the video and I can watch it live up there, or if I miss something, I can go watch it or listen to it later. So the Texas Manifesto, this is really all I've been talking about for like a year and a half or 2 years. But it's really about our mission, our vision to really connect together all of Texas. We love Austin. We've been loving Austin for a long time. You're gonna hear a lot more today about how much I love Austin. But as much as Austin is great, Austin doesn't have all the pieces of the puzzle that it needs, and Texas does. That's really the crux of it. And Texas is a super exciting market. It's one of the most exciting markets, I think, in the world. It's one of the fastest growing markets in the world, and it's one of the most innovative places in the world. And Austin is like right in the center of it. We're in the middle of it. But if you think about it, these cities, Austin, Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio, they're actually pretty different. There are 4 of the fastest growing cities in the country, 4 of the largest cities in the country, and 4 of the top tech hubs in the country. But Austin is kind of this all-star player, like we do lots of different things. The other cities have a lot more focus. San Antonio is a cybersecurity town and a B2B town. Houston, it's oil and gas and health and energy. Dallas, it's esports and fashion and retail and telecommunications and fintech. There's like some specific things they're really, really particularly good at. And in addition to the different industries, when you think of the parts of the ecosystem you need to have a successful company, you need talent and startups. And Austin's really good at that. But you also need money, and you need the big players in the ecosystem, the big companies. And actually, if you look around, where's the money in Texas? It's not actually in Austin. The money, if you actually count up like where all the billionaires live, they live in Houston and Dallas. Like the people with a lot of money to go invest, the family offices, all those things, they're mostly in Houston and Dallas. Why? Because it's oil money. They're used to it coming out of the ground, and that's oil in Dallas. That's Houston and Dallas. And so if you're a startup here in Austin, you should be going to Houston and Dallas to go raise money, because there's a lot of money up there, and they want to invest in stuff, and they don't actually see as much of the kind of things that you see here in Austin. And then also, if you're whatever kind of company you are, whether you're a consumer or you're B2B, there's probably different ways that you can either sell to or sell through other big companies. And Texas has more Fortune 500 companies, more big companies headquartered here than any other state other than New York. There's a lot of them. Guess how many are in Austin? 0. There are none based here. There are a whole bunch of companies that have their second headquarters here, right? Apple has second headquarters here. Oracle has 10,000 people here, right? All these other companies have a lot of people here, but they aren't the decision makers. Those aren't the people. You don't sell to anybody at Apple in Austin. If you want to sell, you got to fly to Cupertino. The headquarters for 50 different Fortune 500 companies are in Houston and Dallas. There's 25 oil and gas companies based in Houston. So if you're an energy company in the US, you're probably based in Houston. And if you're anything else in Texas, you're in Dallas. And in Dallas, that's AT&T and Capital One and JCPenney and Toyota and American Airlines and Southwest, Texas Instruments, and lots of other big companies that are based up there. And those are all companies that you can go do business with or work with or sell to. And then we have one more, USAA is in San Antonio. So those are some of the things about Texas. And our whole thesis that makes it so unique is, some of the other things about that's so unique in one of the things really unique about it is the geography. It's that things are so close together. And then because of that, you can actually go from any one of these cities to any other city just for the day. And so our pitch is you should just basically treat it like one big city. And so that's the way we treat it. And when we work with startups, and if you're in our portfolio, we don't really look and see what city you're in. We don't care. So if there's like a customer you should meet, we just invite you to meet with them. We're like, if you live in Dallas and they're in Austin, like, and it's a big customer, like, you should drive down and meet with them. And if it's a big investor, like, who cares where they are? Like, just go meet with them. And then we do things like rent buses and set up and open an office in Dallas and do other things to make it really easy for people to move back and forth and to make those connections. And that is really what our manifesto is about. You can read more about it at texasstartupmanifesto.com. And we're going to be really bringing this to life in 2 months in June. We're doing a Texas roadshow, a 3-day roadshow for investors across the whole state. Where we'll be taking investors around the state, showing them off all the things happening here. That's texasstartups.com. Austin, in particular, is the shining star. Like these days, when I'm in the other cities, I don't show these slides and talk about how great Austin is. But pretty much like every top 10 list, Austin's at the top of the list, right? The best place to live, best places to start a business, best places to get a job, best places for programmers to get a job, best places to hire programmers. Dallas is, usually Dallas, Houston, Austin, they're all on the list, but Austin's usually number 1. How many years in a row can Austin be the fastest growing city in the country? Isn't there some kind of like math problem in that? Like, doesn't it just not work? Isn't it? But somehow it's been the fastest growing city in the country for like 10 years. And it looks like it's gonna be the fastest growing city in the country next year. And same thing with best place to live. It's just consistently one of the best places to live, even as it's changed and continued. It's not quite the same city it always was. So continues to boom. And really, it's kind of like, no one will ever be Silicon Valley, and no one ever should. And Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley, just like no one's ever going to be Hollywood but Hollywood. But the trend clearly is it's only going to get easier to do things that aren't Silicon Valley. Like no matter what you think about how good it is now, or how good Austin is, or anything else, pretty hard to argue that it's just going to get easier to do things that aren't in Silicon Valley everywhere. And of all those other places, Austin's really one of the best places. Like you're in a really good spot, you know, like, and that's what we got going for us. We're like king of the midgets. Of all the places that aren't there, we are like the best. And in that way, and I meet so many people that are coming here from all over that are, you know, want to learn about Austin, want to plug into Austin. Austin's the aspirational city. Austin's the city that every other city wants to be when they grow up. Like they know they're not going to be Silicon Valley. They know they're not going to be New York. They know that, but they're like, you know, if we try really hard, we can be Austin someday. That's what they all show up here thinking, and that's what they want to get the playbook. They want to figure out how they can go do it. So how did we do it? How did Austin become a tech hub? Like anything, probably a lot of serendipity and luck and circumstances, but there were some people that were pretty intentional about it, that were doing things to try to make sure that this happened. And as I got to Austin and I talked to people and met people, there was really one name that just kept coming up over and over again, and it was this guy. His name's George Kosmetsky. And he was the founder of he's an entrepreneur. He was the founder of a national computer company called Teledyne, which was before my time, but was like big when computers were big, like physically time. And so he built up that business, became a very successful entrepreneur, was here in Austin, got involved in the city and the Chamber of Commerce in the university. He helped create the IC Squared Institute at UT Austin, which is a epic foundational thing there, which also created the Austin Technology Incubator, ATI, which is one of the oldest incubators in the country. He did a lot of other things for Austin and for the community here, and there's a lot of people here who all to look up to him as like one of their mentors. Like if somebody shows up and they're like, George Kosmetsky was one of my mentors, that's like a big deal. That's like, you know, and so he's really the guy. But of all the things that he did, one of the biggest things and one of the real inflection points for Austin, that if you were to point back to time and be like, oh, that was when like something happened or things started, was this. And that building doesn't have those initials on it anymore, but it was called the Microelectronics and Computer Technology Corporation. Also, another part of it was called Semitech. And this was kind of like when Army Futures Command came here. In fact, as Army Futures Command, which I'll talk about later, came, that was the best analogy I could think of what maybe that would be like. But this was a public-private partnership. There was a big RFP done. It was the 80s. We weren't worried about the Chinese and AI. We weren't worried about the Russians and misinformation. We were about the Japanese and them outsmarting us on chips and semiconductors. And that was like the race we were in at the time, was the semiconductor. And so the US was trying to figure out how to respond to that, and they said, okay, we're gonna put this big public-private partnership together and all these research dollars and all these scientists and put them together to have us be a big, you know, be better at making semiconductors and chips. And so then they put up, like kind of like Amazon did with their RFP for like which city. They did this big thing looking for cities, and all these cities were competing to be the city that got Semitech and MCC. And Austin won that bid. And this building is now called the West Pickle Research Center. It's up north near the Domain, and it's now part of UT. But that's what brought it here. That's what created this big building. And doing that brought all these engineers and talent and people to Austin, and really put Austin on the map as a tech center, as a tech place. And then I don't know the exact order of this, but which ones came which, but you know, AMD is here, and Motorola, and IBM, and like a lot of them. And Apple does I think Apple does all their chip design in Austin too, now still, and because Apple makes all their own chips. And that's all that leads back to like this foundation of this thing. The reason all those companies are still here and growing and big is because of MCC, and that really put Austin on the map as a tech town. The next thing was Michael Dell, and that was just up there. If that big white building wasn't there, you'd see the UT Tower where's his dorm room where he started Dell. And Dell was the next thing that really put Austin on the map. And when I moved here to Austin in 1999, this was a Dell town. Like everybody worked for Dell, knew somebody that worked for Dell. Dell's name still is on all the biggest institutions and hospitals and schools and things in town. And really, it was the first example for me of how a company can really create an ecosystem. Like there's like generations, there's a family tree full of generations of companies that came out of Dell, right? From all these people that grew up at Dell, that learned how to build a company, that were part of a team, that learned skills, that met other people, that learned about problems, that made customer relationships, that made a lot of money, and then went off and did their own thing. And so much in this leads back to Dell. And I think that's one of the other really foundational things in Austin's history. And so that's a little bit of the history lesson, and that leads to Capital Factory. Capital Factory is the present, not the past, although we're about to have our 10-year anniversary party coming up this summer. But Capital Factory is the center of gravity for entrepreneurs and startups here in Austin, and now more and more so in Texas. And really for us, that's really about being the center of gravity is about people. It's about connecting people together. And again, that's you know, there are all kinds of things that happen here. Like, yes, we have a co-working space and we do events and we invest in stuff, but really we're about people. We're about connecting people together. People come to Capital Factory because they're looking for people. And so most of the people that are part of our community are just, get it for free. Like, they come to one of the thousands of events that happen here every year, and they're participating in stuff, and most of the things are free and open to the public. Then you can come be part of it. You can become a member here, and then you have an access card, and you can come work here. And in addition to obviously just working here, you get access, most importantly, to the people, to our mentor network. And there's a whole bunch of mentors, people like Mark, who was one of the first Capital Factory mentors ever when we first started in 2009, who volunteer their time and are here, and you can go meet with them. And there's like a big calendar on the wall and a website, and you can just go and be like, oh, I'm gonna grab 30 minutes with that person, and 30 minutes with that person, and 30 minutes with that person. And every day there's different people here. Tomorrow there'll be like a whole bunch of different people. And that's a big part of why people are here is being able to plug in and connect like that. And that's, I've got a team of like, I think about 80 people on our team. And like, that's what they're all about. They're all about connecting people together. That's what our whole culture's about. That's what they celebrate. That's what they're gonna brag to me about. They're like, Josh, I got this person in front of this investor. I got this person, they got to pitch this Army general that came through. That's what everyone here is excited about. So in addition, Capital Factory is an accelerator, and there are a lot of accelerators in Austin and in Texas. And many people that are new to town are thinking about fundraising. That's a big reason you go to as an accelerator, is to build your network, because you don't already know a lot of people, or you want it to keep growing. And so just as a quick overview, we go through a lot of these a lot more in the fundraising session, but the one that's on the first Tuesday of the month. But here are just some of all the different accelerators here in Texas. You can see there are a lot of tech ones and a lot in Austin, but there's a lot of ones that focus on all kinds of different themes and topics and work in different ways, and ones located in different places around the state. There's also nonprofit accelerators as well, that have different levels of funding, often attached to university or something like that. And we have a number of those. We have a ton of angel networks here in Texas, and we actually have two of the most active angel networks in the country. CTAN, the Central Texas Angel Network in Austin, which is actually, they're based here at Capital Factory, and HAN, the Houston Angel Network, are consistently competing to be the angel networks in the US that make the most investments and deploy the most money. So like, they're always number one and number two. Like, it's kind of awesome. Like, and it's not like the Houston ones only invest in Houston companies. Like, they invest in Austin companies too. And then there's a whole bunch of other smaller angel networks, and they're great too, but we actually happen to have two of the biggest angel networks, the two biggest angel networks in the country. Another thing you have to mention when you talk about the startup scene is UT Austin. As I mentioned, it'd be right north of us behind that building. If that building wasn't there, you can see it. Every great startup city has to have a great university. That's just like a key part of it, because talent's so important. And we are, again, kind of so fortunate to have one of the biggest and best universities here. It is one of the biggest, it's one of the largest in the country. It's a research university, it's super technical. UT Austin has the largest graduating computer science class in the country, so they're graduating more computer scientists, and they were just ranked #1 in the country. Like, it doesn't get much better than that. Also, huge, really great engineering school. Just like when I was studying computer science, and a lot of my friends were in mechanical engineering 20 years ago, most of them ended up programming and being computer scientists. I expect half that engineering school will end up being programmers too. So it's really just an incredible resource and a great talent pool to everything else we have going on. They are their own gravity. They now have the Dell Medical School bringing all this health innovation coming in. A big part of why the Army's here is to be near the university and things that they do. And there's a lot going on there. And I was just there this morning. There's a class called Hacking for Defense, which is also connected to the Army. And they're helping students kind of think about Army problems. And so I was meeting with them. I teach the main undergrad entrepreneurship class at UT I have for about 10 years. It's called Longhorn Startup. And we'll have our, there's the lab this semester. We have 12 student teams going through that all have their different startup ideas. And they all kind of go through almost like a mini Capital Factory. Like they get mentors and time to work on their startup while they're in school. And they all compete for a $25,000 investment at the end of the semester. And if you want to plug in at UT, a couple key people that you want to know. One of them is Mitch Jacobson. Mitch is the director of ATI, which I mentioned earlier, the Austin Technology Incubator, which is the incubator at UT. He also runs the Blackstone Launchpad, and Blackstone is the Blackstone Launchpad is a program at a bunch of different universities designed to help promote entrepreneurship there. And Mitch was an entrepreneur himself. He's been an angel investor, and in particular, what ATI, everybody has to find their niche or their focus, and they're helpful with a lot of different things. But the thing that they've really focused on that makes them different from a lot of other incubators is hard tech, deep tech things that involve a lot of research and often require a lot of capital, raising a lot of money. So today, those tanks tend to be energy, water, other areas that maybe not you might not quickly see get funded in other places. I need to get more descriptions here for Jan, but another one is Jan Ryan. Jan is an incredible entrepreneur and an educator now. She's been a mentor here at Capital Factory forever. She helped start Women at Austin, which is a really great women's networking and mentorship group here in Austin. And now she is working on within the design school at UT, working around entrepreneurship and working around creativity and entrepreneurship and doing some really interesting things there. And then another person knows Melanie Price. She's also a co-founder here at Capital Factory. And in addition to being a serial entrepreneur and investor, she runs the commercialization program, the CoLab at the Dell Medical School. So looking at how they take the innovations coming out of the medical school and commercialize them. And so really ramped up in particular, obviously, on health. And I think the last thing for UT is Texas Venture Labs. And that's another great program. They primarily focus on graduate students and management students. They have a few different programs there, but the one that I'm most excited about is their accelerator program. And what's different about the Texas Venture Labs accelerator versus any other that I've seen is, as opposed to being a program where like they take your startup and your startup gets mentored or goes through something, what it is they have teams of MBA students. And if your startup gets selected, you get one of the teams of MBA students assigned to you, and then they get to go kind of work on a problem for you. And it's really them going through the accelerator, but your company is the example. And what you get out of it is you get some kind of work product or something that comes out of that. And interestingly enough, and I think a great example of how collaborative Austin is after a few years of having many of our companies, of our startups, go through Texas Venture Labs who would benefit from it and be part of it. And every year they would always email me and ask, like, hey, which companies do you think should be part of it this year? Who should we get to apply? One year, a couple of years ago, I said, well, actually, what do you think about Capital Factory going through it? And they thought that was a really interesting idea. And so Capital Factory went through Texas Venture Labs. And even though we were already up and running, but we got a team of MBAs to come, help us think about some of the stuff that we were doing. And it was really great. So some other things you need to know about Austin Startup Week. That's in October in the fall. It's the week before the Austin City Limits Music Festival, and that's the biggest thing that happens in the entrepreneur community here outside of South by Southwest. And it's really a celebration of all the great things that happen every week in Austin, but we're kind of putting as much of it together in 1 week as you can, and really showcasing it and bringing everybody together and bringing people in from out of town and things like that. The other big thing is during the year South by Southwest. That's our Super Bowl. We just kind of wrapped it up. I think most of my team is still recovering from South by Southwest, and it's something that in about a month or two we'll start working on next year's South by Southwest. It's something you kind of like end up. It's like an all-year affair. But South by is pretty awesome. South by is this thing that really also helped put Austin on the map and really elevates it every year. It puts a spotlight on Austin every year. It brings tons of people here, and it's just an incredible resource and opportunity for all of us to help grow your business, to do business development. It's just like it's a great time where suddenly the whole world comes and all these big companies come and all these investors come, and it's something you really can and should take advantage of. And we work our butts off to take full advantage of it. And so when you think about South by, there's two ways you can do South by. There's the official and the unofficial way. The official way is to have a badge to buy a ticket. It's awesome. It's expensive. I think they start at about $800, and it can get a lot more expensive. That gives you kind of full access to everything, music, film, and all the tech stuff. There's parties, there's other things that you have to have a badge to be able to go do, and that gets you access to all those things. But if you can't get a badge because for some, you can't afford it or it doesn't fit for what you're doing, there's still there's so much happening at South by that you could have a completely full day and never run out of things to do if you just went to things that have nothing, that don't require a badge, that are unofficial, that are private parties being put on by companies and activations and other things like that. And so you really can milk it. And so don't feel like just because you don't have a badge that you can't do South by Southwest or you can't be part of it. And for me, while I do like the big parties, we actually throw the biggest party at South by. It's called the Startup Crawl, and it's pretty awesome. The best things at South by are not being at the biggest party. The best things are being at the smallest party. The best things being at, finding that small dinner with a dozen or 2 dozen people that are from your industry, that are really interesting, that are coming together, that you can really learn from or benefit from or do business with. And I think the best, smartest thing you can do to take advantage of South by is just make your own one of those. If all you did is you just curated one awesome dinner or event and you did your homework to go look through all the speakers and reach out to people and figure out who are the really interesting people that are coming and maybe the people you've always wanted to meet or look up to, and if you can put together a dinner and get them there, that will be the best thing you ever go to at South by, and totally worth it. For me, that's Stephen Wolfram. If you know Stephen Wolfram, he's one of the most brilliant, smartest people I've ever met in my life, and every South by I try to get a small dinner with Stephen Wolfram, and blows my mind. And then the trick is once you have one interesting person coming, you use them to get everybody else to come. Right? You're hey, you want to come to dinner with Stephen Wolfram? And lots. Then you can get other really interesting people to come, and you can do your own version of that. So I think one of the last things I'll talk about here is Army Futures Command. This is new to Austin. I would more broadly call it Defense Innovation. This is actually one of our Army t-shirts, which is our toy soldier wearing VR goggles. This is really interesting because Austin is now a new center of gravity for defense innovation, for the U.S. military trying to figure out how they can be more innovative. And I'm not sure, different things might come to mind when you think about that, but you could probably, if you imagine, they didn't come here thinking wow, Austin and Capital Factory, they've got lots of guns we're looking for and new types of fighter planes and things like that. That's not the point of them all coming here. It's really two different things. One is just cultural. It's they need to learn how to move faster and how to be more innovative. And that's really difficult for really big organizations. And traditionally, it takes them a really long time to do anything. And that doesn't work anymore in today's world that moves so fast. And so they need to learn how to be more like a startup and how to take risks and to work more like this. And that's one part of them being here. But then another part of it is that the Army, as an example, just the Army, not all of the military, but just the U.S. Army, has more than 1 million employees, people that work for them. They're the biggest company in the United States. They have all kinds of problems, right? They have vehicles. They have one of the biggest vehicle fleets in the country, and they have to do maintenance on all those cars. They're the largest healthcare provider in the U.S., and all those people have all the kind of healthcare problems that everybody else would go have. They have to do payroll, just like everybody else does. They have to fill out travel reports and expenses. They have all those problems, except most of them are worse because they're the government. So those are really the opportunities that they see coming here. They call it dual use, but it's how can they find things that are being developed for commercial industry that they can use too, that can help them be more effective. And it turns out, they can be a pretty good customer. They can spend a lot of money. They spend a lot of money on stuff, and if you get in with one of them, you can get in with a whole bunch of them. And so that's what we think is really interesting about it, is being able to, one, help them be successful in what they're doing, and because we definitely think if there's some way we can contribute to that, that's great. And, it seems to me like the wars of the future are going to be fought as much with computers as they are with guns, and I definitely want our AI to beat the Chinese AI and the Russians' AIs and everybody like that. And also, a lot of these problems aren't about guns or weapons or anything like that. They're about help, they're big business opportunities for the startups that are here, and we're seeing that happen already. So I think that's what gets us excited about it. So before I bring Mark up, I want to mention another thing that one of our members here, Steven Strauss, launched. It's called the Diversity Pledge. It's something I was really proud to sign on to early on. And you can learn more about it at diversitypledge.org. But it's really about ways to make your business more successful because it both makes a lot of common sense, and we've seen it over and over that having different people on the team makes the company more successful in a lot of different ways. And yet it's something that you have to be pretty intentional and try to do. And so the diversity pledge is basically like a small number of things that says like, this is what we're gonna adopt as a company to make sure that have best practices around it. One of the best things on there is called the Walker Rule, which is named after, I think it was the first female black millionaire, her last name was Walker. But basically it's inspired by the Rooney Rule, which came out of, I think, football, for hiring football coaches. But it basically says that you're always gonna try to consider different people for different roles. It doesn't say who you have to hire, but at least make sure that every time you're putting a position together that you've got diverse people in the pipeline. And there's some other good suggestions in there to help make it better. So if you're interested in that, I would check it out. It's something that I signed and a lot of the other CEOs and leaders have signed on to as well. And so with that, I want to invite Mark up. If Mark wants to pull up a chair. Mark's a good friend of mine, and like I said, he's actually been here at Capital Factory since day one, and is one of the best examples of how Capital Factory actually really had the Texas Manifesto going from day one, because of the 20 first mentors that we had. I wanted to have people from other cities around Texas as well to mix it up, and so Mark at the time was in Houston and was our token Houston mentor. No, I don't mean it that way, but was our Houston mentor. And we had Pat Condon from San Antonio at the time. And we didn't have Dallas covered, interestingly enough, that I'm now spending so much time in Dallas.
Making up for it.
Yeah, so really glad to have him join us here. Mark's been an entrepreneur and an investor, and in particular now, he's really just a startup community leader. He's involved in a lot of different things. He's helped start a lot of different things. Seems to have landed his dream job of all the things I've seen him do, where he's now working with one of the best startup law firms in town, Miller Egan, but basically and doing business development for them, which basically means being out in the community and meeting tons of people and helping them, and just being a helpful resource in the community, because that's a big part of how you network and drive stuff in. And so it's great to see him in that role. So. He's started a bunch of different other community groups, organizations, newsletters. I think we've got a slide with some on here. One of them that he does is called Open Coffee, which is another great networking event where you can meet other entrepreneurs. And you can see the info on this up there. It's a little bit small, but it's opencoffeeaustin.com, and it meets once a week every Thursday at different places. And then he also has 2 really great newsletters that come out every week. One is the Texas Squared Startup Newsletter, which covers the whole state. And it's texassquared.com. And I think a new one, Texas Boxed, covering all the CPG stuff going on in Texas too. So thanks for joining us, Mark.
Well, thank you very much, and it's very big shoes to fill. Before we really get into this, I'm going to give a plug for Josh. He doesn't need it, but I'm going to do it anyway. We wouldn't have a startup community in Austin without Josh. Period. The end. Full stop.
I don't know about that.
That's true, and he's going to deny it, but it's true. Josh has built Capital Factory, along with partners and others and friends and sponsors and everything else, on his back, because you can tell he's very passionate about it. He's very good at it. The fact is that the startup community, the modern startup community, basically in the last 10 years, has fortified and multiplied because of efforts of Josh and his friends and the people that have worked here. And we're talking about all those number ones that Austin ranks at. He's a very, very big part of that, personally and professionally. So I'm just honored to be asked to be up here and happy to answer any questions.
All right, Love Fest over. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, we'll stop names on the back.
Awesome. So when you signed up for this session today, it asked a question. It said, they can see other side.
Okay.
It said, do you have any questions? Or just coming closer, a little further away. It asked you if you had any questions, or a question. And we're not going to just go through and answer all the questions. We do this more just to kind of to throw it up there so you can see them. And so this will remind you maybe of the question you asked, or you can see some of the questions that other people asked. So we'll just leave that up there. But really from here, we just kind of throw it out to you guys, and you can, like I said, the AMA is Ask Me Anything, so you can ask us anything. most people might ask about Austin, about startups, about how they can plug in, about how they might find a co-founder or meet an investor or get started or some challenge they're facing or whatever else. Looks like we got a starter.
Yeah, what do you guys see as the biggest challenges for Austin-specific startups?
What's an Austin-specific startup?
Let's start with that.
An Austin,
Yeah,
there's a
answer
startup
that.
that happens to be based in Austin?
Yeah, like what are the challenges that you think are unique to folks who are in the Austin ecosystem, in this network and market versus, it's similar to probably the third question up there, you know, how's it compared to Valley or New York or some of the other areas?
Startups will automatically say lack of money, but that's not the real answer.
That's certainly nothing unique to Austin.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
exactly
yeah.
right. All startups, that's not
Austin
unique
has
to
more than most. Yeah.
I would say, in this personal opinion, I think we have, and it's a very subtle thing, I think we have a lack of middle managers. Now, we've got some great CEOs, we've got some great people here. We actually have a very, in my opinion, based on other cities, not just Silicon Valley, we actually have a lack of people who have been there and done that in 2 or 3 different companies that want to go back and do it at the same level, at that mid-manager level. Not, I've been a product manager for a very long time, now I want to be a CEO. We've got a lot of those. We have very few people that can take the learnings and the leanings of individual companies and bring them to their next company. So it's a talent issue, but it's not necessarily a programmer problem.
Can I ask a follow-on to that? So do you think that's a problem of bringing people into town, or do you think it's that the resources in town aren't available or looking
A little bit of both.
Okay.
A little
It's just
bit
a
of both.
pipeline, it's just a marketplace
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, it's a balance.
Time balances itself out. I don't know, I think I generally probably agree with that. I don't know if that's exactly what you were asking. I mean, honestly, like, there isn't much about Austin that makes it uniquely challenging. Like, most of the things about Austin, as Mark said, most people, it starts with funding, and people look about funding. And so the classic thing to do is say, like, well, look at the size of the economy in Texas, look at the size of the economy in California. Okay, California gets more funding based on the size of the economy than Texas. So based on the size of the economy, we should get more funding. And that may be true. But if you did that comparison and you looked at anywhere else, Texas and Austin, or like Austin is like the best of everywhere else, pretty much. That's not, San Francisco or Silicon Valley, with few exceptions. Maybe it's like New York or 1 or 2 others. Like, it's really one of the best out there. So on the one hand, it's like, oh, it's not as good as it could be. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, but it's kind of like the best of like almost every other place you could ever pick. And most things are like that around here. So like, I mean, look, if you're not being successful in this market here, like, it's your fault. Like, that's okay. Like, it should be your fault. Like, there's lots of things that we all can do better. But like, there's no big major flaw holding you back. Like, this is the land of freaking opportunity. Like, that'd be my tough love answer to that.
I come to a ton of these things more so just because I like learning about different stuff. But as far as like the startups go, it seems to be, and I guess my question is how diverse is your investor network? Because it seems that, like, I know like South by Southwest started as a punk rock festival, but it's a tech festival now, right? And obviously there's music there, but like, so.
When you ask how diverse is the investors, do you mean what kind? Do you mean do they invest in different things, or do you mean diversity?
I guess like how wide are those scopes of investment, or is it specific to when you guys talk about startup here?
Yeah.
Is it pretty much specific?
Yeah,
to
so that's
tech?
a great question. So when I talk about startups, you should just insert the word tech startup in front of that every time. Like, I'm generalizing about tech startups. I can clarify and I can talk about other startups too, but if I'm just generally talking, I'm probably talking about a tech startup. That may not be true for Mark.
I'm mostly talking about tech startups. I have a new angle, which is consumer packaged goods, but ultimately, when you're talking about the lens of what investors are looking for here in the startup world, tech startups, it's a handful of categories within tech.
So then here at Capital Factory, it's mostly tech investors. That's what they're investing in the most. And I'd say of like all of the angel investors you're gonna find, certainly in Austin, most of them are gonna be looking at tech. Now that said, there's a lot of angel investors in Austin, and they invest in a lot of different things. And there is a lot of investors in Austin who will do CPG. There's a Venn diagram. It's not the exact same people. Like, some of them will do both, and some of them are just CPG, and some of them are, tech. And there's other investors like who like mostly do restaurants. Like it's just like a totally different thing. Like
Or
I've
real
invest-
estate or
Yeah, like I've invested in a bunch of restaurants. That's not, it doesn't look anything like investing in a tech startup, right? Or investing in real estate, you know, or oil and gas. This is Texas. There's people that like know how to go drill holes, right? And know, invest in oil and gas. So those are all different kinds of things. Generally, people invest in what they know, and so that's, you know, you have to find the pocket of those people to do that.
Can I have a follow-up to that? real
Yeah.
quick? So one other thing is, I guess along those lines is, I'm curious with the growth of tech here in Austin. I think that's what you guys have become known for. But one of the reasons why I moved here was based on kind of like the film community and the music community. And to be completely honest, are you guys worried
Yes.
with all the investment that goes on in tech, that you're gonna lose that cultural identity? Take out the Keep Austin Weird part, but like,
Absolutely, yeah.
I've been to Nashville several times. This is certainly not the live music capital of the world anymore.
Yeah,
That's
it's
all
not. Yeah,
about
it's not. It's not about
embrace it.
investment though. I mean, yes, people are worried about it, and I am. People should be. It's not about investment though. That's not, investor dollars are not what made this the live music capital world. It's really primarily my understanding an affordability problem. I mean, it's just that the artists can't afford to live in Austin anymore. Like, and so like it's hard to have people working, you know, playing at all the bars downtown when like they can't live within a half an hour anymore, and they got to go live, you know, in Wimberley or something, right, or somewhere else. And that's what I hear about more and more is the affordability issues driving the musicians out of town.
I agree with that.
But it's not like there used to be investor dollars to invest in
I
tech
was just-
music, and there
I
aren't
mean-
anymore. You know, like that's not what drives it.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
So I've heard the argument about, you know, ideas are everywhere and it's all about execution. How do you take an idea that's not proprietary, that anybody else could enter into that same space? Like how do you get started in that process, and when do you know, like when you're comfortable enough, you're far enough along to where you can actually, it's hard to generate interest without being very specific about what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So it's hard to like raise, you know.
So I teach this class at UT. I got a dozen teams in there right now. They're all so diverse. They do all kinds of different things. Like some of them are like, you know, one of them has like a solar motor, but it's actually not a motor. It's actually just a material that based on the heat actually moves to follow the sun. So there's no moving parts, but the solar panel follows the sun, right? And then we have these guys making grilled cheese sandwiches. They're fucking awesome. Trust me, they would not be in my class if they weren't fucking awesome. Selling grilled cheese sandwiches. So talk about like selling something anybody could go do, but they're brilliant. They're so, I mean, you meet these people, you're like, holy shit, they're selling grilled cheese sandwiches. Like, they've got 3 different kinds of grilled cheese sandwiches. There's like the cheap one, the medium one, and the expensive one. They've got the whole logistics thing figured out about why this is super efficient and why they can deliver the cheapest, fastest food you can get on campus, which is what matters on campus. And the geography benefits they get from it, right, and things like that. Like, it's a super smart business, and you meet them and you're like, holy shit, like, man, I can't wait to see what they do. Like, one, I'll invest in this, but I can't wait to see what they go do next, right? You know, like, and these people are super impressive. And if they can figure that out with a grilled cheese sandwich, like, what else could they go do, right? And, you know, I think that's part of the point is like, you know, there's things that are about like, how do you, like, there's like knowing how to run a business, and then there's like inventing something. And those are actually like 2 totally different things, right? And like, they often get kind of confused into thinking they're the same thing, and they're just figuring out how to run a business. It doesn't matter. And at that point, like, yeah, you can just do it better than everybody else at some level, right?
Out executing is really about finding the right customers as fast as you can. I mean, ultimately, it's about customer traction. You hear about that all the time here in Josh's class and everywhere else. It's all about traction. How can you get the right profile of customer to say yes and put money in your hand as soon as possible? That's really what it boils down to.
Gort's cheese.
What is it?
Gort's cheese.
Gort's cheese.
A bad name. I don't know about that, but.
Are there any events or any of these
The answer's
sort of
yes.
things that have a higher serendipitous sort of moment or?
South by
to look out
Southwest
for?
is known for South by Dippity. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Josh has put together Startup Crawl here. It's 25,000 people here. 30,000. How many people show up?
1 million people.
All right, but actual human beings downstairs and up here all over, there's 30,000 people here, and you're bumping against anybody and everybody. So Startup Week for sure. Every happy hour, every event, everything is gonna have interesting new people. This whole room right now is new faces for Capital Factory, and they've been doing this 10 years. So The answer is serendipity happens, and that's actually one of Austin's really, truly magical things, is that, we were talking about this earlier, we like meeting other people. Nobody is from here originally. We're all some sort of expats from some other place. And so that serendipity happens a lot because we're so used to dealing with new people. So just about any event you go to, you will not be turned away at the door because your grandfather's grandfather didn't get raised here. So that's easy.
Okay, but shameless plug for your own event, like Open Coffee, the thing that he does every week,
Actually,
is
yeah.
like one of those things. Like
Thank you,
that's
yeah.
the like, we have there's nobody presenting, like ever, and it's usually like a dozen people, or
Yeah,
maybe sometimes
20,
bigger.
sometimes
you
we get
know?
about 20 people.
But the point being, it's kind of intimate. Like like you actually just sit down, and you get to know
Right.
other people, and like
Over coffee, and it's simple, it's
Yeah.
not like, it's not transactional, it's very relationship based. I mean, that's the point.
a little more like engineered. So one of the events one of my favorite events is called Epic Office Hours.
Killer.
And it's one of the events that we do to help meet new people. They're often themed, like there'll be like a VR Epic Office Hours, or a health Epic Office Hours, or a veterans Epic Office Hours, or women's Epic Office
AI,
Hours.
whatever.
But it's a way that we will bring in a whole bunch of new people, and in a speed dating format, get them in front of a whole bunch of mentors in like 2 hours. And that's really interesting for the people. They get a lot of feedback, and it's fun and interesting for them. But it's also for us a way we get to like meet a whole bunch of new people and evaluate them really quickly. And that is like a serendipity machine. I mean, like it's awesome. And honestly, like literally just sitting in the kitchen here is like really good. I mean, that's what this place is. Like everybody, this is where, if you're new to town, like this is where you come. And when you, like, part of sitting in the kitchen is kind of like making yourself open to that. It's like, it's pretty, there's some subtle things about being in a co-working space, like 2 headphones on means like, don't talk to me. 1 headphone on means like, okay, you can interrupt me, but only if it's important, like, and where you sit, and like, like all these things matter. And like, if you sitting in the kitchen is kind of like, hey, I'm sitting in the kitchen, come talk.
The entire world, from presidents to sultans to, Indian chiefs, come in through that kitchen.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the pictures that we do on the slideshow. I mean, you see all these different faces. That kitchen, that's no joke. I mean, that really is the true individual center of gravity, of the center of gravity. And so sitting there, hanging out, pounding on your laptop, just open to people, hey, what are you working on, what are you doing, bumping into somebody at the microwave. That is the true definition of serendipity, especially at a co-working space as big as this. I mean, we're talking about 4 floors of activity, but right there on the 16th floor, that's where the magic happens.
In general, I know things can vary, but in general, what is the best time or the worst time for someone to find investors? And what's the balance between like building your company and having success stories to show investors that you can do it versus like needing those funds?
Yeah, the best time is when you don't need them.
The only time, is because that's the only time they're gonna give it to you. Investors are like bankers, they'll give you an umbrella in the sunshine and take it away in the rain. The fact is that finding investors is really difficult. Investors finding you makes it a lot easier. So making your story known and making your mission known to the people that care about you is a lot better than beating the bushes and trying to find investors, because they will run and hide from you. So to answer that question, we just showed up. There's I believe it's 13 separate angel groups that are under the ATAN, the Alliance of Texas Angel Networks. That's a good place to start. CTAN and HAN being the number 1 and number 2. There's also SWAN, which sounds like you're a little bit more on the impact side, because you're doing a social impact for what you're doing. There's a SWAN, which is a social impact investment group. Impact Hub, which is not physically here, but obviously friendly here. There's Tarmac. There's a few others that might be of more interest to somebody with a social impact or ability to do that.
Yeah, and then Tarmac and Impact Hub don't invest, but Notley.
Notley
That's
does.
the other that does.
Yep.
But so Notley Ventures.
Notley.
But specifically to your question of when, I mean, there's no right answer and there's no perfect answer, and every business is different. In general, like the answer is like, yeah, the best time to raise money is when you don't need it. Like that's when you're gonna get the best terms. That's when you're gonna be the most attractive. It's kind of ironic, but like that just is the nature of it. It's like a company that doesn't need the money is a really attractive business because it's really strong and it looks, like it's not gonna fail, right? And so you just kind of have to work backwards from there. Obviously, like if that sounds nice, you're like, great, but I need money now, so thanks a lot. You kind of work backwards. Like generally the best reason to raise money is to acquire customers. Like that's like an easy pitch, right? Like, hey, I've got it all built and figured out. I know what I'm selling. I know who I'm selling it to. I know how to sell it. And I've kind of got a black box. Like you put money in this side and more money comes out the other side. That's a good thing to raise money for. And that's, you're raising money to go acquire customers basically. And if your pitch to investors is like, I'm gonna take your money and I'm gonna hire a bunch of salespeople who are gonna sell this, or I'm gonna spend it on marketing that I've tested and I know that if I spend it on this marketing, it's gonna produce these kinds of, this revenue and these kinds of results, like that's a pretty, it's a math equation. Like that's where you wanna get to, right? And then everything about being a startup, but that doesn't sound much like a startup anymore either, right? It's like, I figured it all out. And everything about a startup is like working backwards from there to like, okay, I really don't know anything, right? And so the further you can get without money, the stronger your pitch is gonna be, the higher your valuation is gonna be, the whatever, right? And so the series of fundraising is really typically a series of milestones where you're de-risking the business by proving or learning certain things. And so from an investor's perspective, starting from scratch, you have this idea. The first risk is like execution risk. Like, can you do anything? Is like the first question, right? And so literally it's like, well, what can you do without any money? Like, that's my first test. So if it's a software thing, it's like, you should be able to build it. Because these days, you should be able to build it. You should be able to figure out a way to get built. And so, what can you build on your own, right? And then I'm gonna look at it, right? And like, does it look like a piece of shit? Or is it really impressive? Like, that's my first test. You haven't done much, but at least I can see, like, can you build a team? Can you build anything, right? The team, can you assemble a team? Like, that's all tests, right? Then it's, okay, I built something, like, does anybody want it, right? And like, so, and these could happen in a slightly different order too, but like, if you talk to customers and like, wow, I've talked to a bunch of customers, there's demand, okay, wow, if they build it, people will pay for it, okay. Now, can you get someone to pay for it? Okay, I've gotten a small number of people paying for it. Okay, will they really use it? Okay, now there's, like, see, these are all like milestones, right? And a lot of times you're raising money to figure out that milestone, because every time you figure out one of those things, your company's worth more money in like a step function. Like that's what allows you to raise more money, is you didn't just get incrementally more valuable, you got a step function more valuable. So like, oh wow, like now we've proven people will really buy this, like, okay, you're more valuable. Oh wow, like we figured out how to sell it. Like we figured out like our thing is SEO. And like we know how to do, like boom, you're a lot more valuable.
And quickly, before we get to that question, the best time to raise money is especially if you don't need it. But Austin's very much a bootstrap town, in that we really like to do things generally that you can do on your own, like Josh said, where you build it yourself, do it yourself, and not need the money. That's when the money comes in. But we really tend to do a lot more focus on bootstrapping and growing businesses on your own based on customer buying your product.
What do you look for when you choose mentors for Capital Factory? Looking for somebody to fill an area of expertise or some other factors?
It's changed over time because we're so fortunate right now that we have a lot of great people.
They would have never let me in now. I got in early. Thank God I did. They can't kick me out.
No.
They could kick me out.
We do kick people out. So we're so fortunate that we get to be really picky right now, because we don't need much of anything. Like, we've got a lot of great people, and there's always kind of like interesting. You meet somebody you didn't know you needed. You're like, oh wow, that's really interesting. But like, no, we've got lots of people that are lots of experts on everything. The ideal profile for a mentor that we look for, and I think these are the details, like if you get into it, that actually really differentiate our mentor network from a lot of other ones. That there are a lot of great mentor networks that do different things and focus on different ways. But I think ours is definitely the highest quality one as far as the experience of the mentors and like their resumes and profiles and their activity as investors. And that's because our profile of the mentor is someone who was the founder or one of the very first employees at a company that was successful at raising a significant amount of money or selling for a lot of money, and they're now an angel investor. That's like the trifecta. Like, you were there at the beginning, you did something significant, and now you're an angel investor. Every startup here wants to talk to that person. right? And we can have an unlimited number of those people. And you're not an asshole, like throw that
That's
in there.
important.
And
Tell
so,
them about EIRs as well.
and so that group, like, we can take an unlimited number of them, but that's a pretty high bar, you know, like that we're gonna filter through. And so I would say about half of our mentors now meet that profile. And we've got like 150 mentors in Austin, I think. And then there's other people, like the first one I'll give up really easy is you're not an angel investor. There's tons of people that are really great people who don't happen to be an angel investor or aren't one right now. Maybe some of them have been and they're not anymore. That's the way this works, you know, like, right? So yeah, certainly there are people that are great people that, you know, aren't an angel investor. And then there's a mural on the 5th floor that's one of my sayings, which was created, I use it for a lot of things now, but it was made for this exact use case for the Mentor Network, which was always make exceptions for awesome. And so we always make exceptions for awesome. And so sometimes you just meet somebody and you're like, oh, that person's fucking awesome. Like, of course they need to be a mentor. Like, maybe they don't meet that criteria, but like, yeah, like everybody would want to talk to them and they're super helpful. Or they're just really differentiated and like we couldn't have 10 of them, but like we could have one of them. And so like, we have a psychologist as a mentor, you know, like a counselor. And a lot of entrepreneurs, like she's full every time. Like people go talk to her, you know, like, and that was, and we didn't look for that. She showed up and was like, do you think people would want that? And we were like, actually, mental health is like a really big issue with entrepreneurs. Like, I don't know if people would do that. And so we just let her try it out one time and she did. And like I said, it filled up and people really liked it. And so, yeah, I'm like, we're not gonna fill it up full of the people like that, but like having one of them on staff is good. We don't have a lot of lawyers just because there's lots of other, like we'll refer you to lawyers and like things like that, but that's just not, you know, we just don't want it to be full of lawyers. But there's an IP lawyer, you know, and like, so if you want to go talk to somebody about like, should I get a patent or not, like there's somebody to go talk to, you know, like, and because that's a pretty common question people get, right? So you see these kind of, and then the other thing we're starting to introduce a lot more of now, because it's really useful, is as we've started working with more corporate partners, if we can bring in like someone, and we're pretty strict about the definition of who it is, but like if there's somebody from Exxon whose job is to find startups that they can go buy stuff from and work with, like, yeah, that's a good person to have there that you can go meet with and, you know, show them what you're working on and see if they like it, or somebody from the Army, you know, or something like that. So that's what kind of fills it in. But it starts with the basis of like, ideally it's, you want to talk to somebody who's been through what you're going through, who's been successful, who could write you a check if they fall in love.
Alec?
You'll give some great insight. I do have a question. What is word of advice that you would give a first-time founder?
You can go ahead. I don't give advice anymore. Nobody listens to advice. I only give my opinion because it's the only thing I've got. That's my own.
That's my experience.
People don't care about advice, honestly. They blow it off. And it's what we talked about. Honestly, the only thing that startups really should care about above everything else, valuations, money, partners, all that, is finding and keeping a happy customer. Everything else falls into place after that. You probably have a lot of different perspective.
Well, that's totally wrong. I'm just kidding. No, not different perspective. But I think, you know, the thing I come to the most is that I see as a very common misconception, things that, you know, people don't really take advantage of, is just that if you're having problems, if you feel like you're banging against your head against the wall, if you're not moving forward and you want to improve things, you want to change that, if you're not able to raise money, if you're not able to get customers, like close deals, if you're not able to figure out your business model, while nothing is easy, or you know, or just like, oh, obvious, the easiest, fastest way to completely change everything and like create an inflection point where it's like goes from like, oh, that was really hard to like, oh my God, suddenly now it's really easy, is to add somebody to the team. Like that's we're like, one day it's like this, and the next day it's totally different, and all you did was add somebody to the team. And suddenly you can raise money really easy, or suddenly you can go close that deal with that big company, or suddenly you can solve some other problem, and all you did was add somebody to the team. And the thing that goes with that is you can add way better people to the team than you might think. And a lot of entrepreneurs and for small companies think like, oh, I could never get some amazing, world-class, awesome person to join my team. And you can. or like just think about like who would be what would be the best person to hire? Like probably like the head salesperson or the second head salesperson from like the big company I'm trying to go kill. That would be a great person to join my team. You can get that person. Like they might, and if they're the right person, they're gonna see it as a huge opportunity. And they're gonna see that they would have, wow, what the impact that they could have at your company. And, you know, so I think one, that's often the answer, like is add somebody to the team and aim really, really high.
How do you decide if you should bring them on as like an equity partner versus raising money to just hire them as an employee and giving them a small percentage? And how do you differentiate? You know, obviously you could bring in a lot of talent by giving away a ton of your company, or you could raise the money and hire them as employees and then keep a higher percentage of it. I guess obviously very, very specific to
Well,
each.
you know the answer. The answer is how long is a piece of string? Depends. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, each individual case is different. Each individual personality is different. Sometimes you are better off being a solo entrepreneur, which we do not recommend in any way. But sometimes you're better off hiring employees and not sharing anything. Sometimes you need that talent, and that talent needs to believe that they're part of the team, and they need a big slice of equity. But you've heard the old saying, you know, would you rather have a bigger piece of a smaller pie or vice versa? I mean, ultimately, it really does depend, of course, on every individual circumstance, but I think, at least in Austin, and this is what I've observed, it's much better to share amongst 4 or 5 people growing fast than keeping everything yourself and growing really, really slow.
Yeah, and a different, I think an old Indian saying, but a different common phrase that you'd apply in a similar way. It says, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go in a group. Right? And so, in a similar way, like you can move really fast for a short period of time, you know, by yourself and not depending on other people. But if you want to build a really big business and you want to take it really far, you probably need a big, strong team around you. And, you know, there's no perfect answer. It's a religious decision for you. It's a religious decision for them. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm not going to convince you or change your mind. Like, you're going to have an opinion on, like, how you want to run the company and, like, how much of it how important you think that is. Might change over time. It does with a lot of entrepreneurs. But, and they're going to have opinion, the people you want to hire. Like, they're going to know if they want equity or if they want to get paid, you know, and you have to match those two things up. And so,
sorry to interrupt. Are there any case studies that you guys can recommend that like companies have done it really well? It would be a good kind of roadmap to follow through that process.
I mean, it gets a lot more specific on what type of business you're trying to build.
Sure.
But it's just, in general, I think your goal should be, and just because I say this, it's not like I can always do it. I haven't done it in all my businesses, but like my goal is, I want to find someone who I want to make an equal co-founder. That would be the best possible outcome, the best possible scenario is I found someone that I believed in, that I thought was just as committed to it as me, that I thought could bring it just as much to the table as me, that was bought into it just as much as me. Like, that would be the best place I could possibly end up.
And share the
Now,
burden.
you shouldn't just do it to anybody. Like, you gotta find that person, and you never even know. It's like getting married. Like, I don't know. How do you know? Am I in love? Like, I don't know. But that's the best thing. Like, that's the best place to get to.
Yeah. Okay.
How about resources or mentors to help with evaluating capital offers or exits?
Almost all of them can. Not everyone. I think last count, I think there's 168 mentors between here and Dallas. But to Josh's point, every single person in the mentor program should at least have had some experience doing valuations. So there's a few that do this professionally. I spend almost all my time outside of Capital Factory dealing with these kinds of issues. There's lots of people that do it better than I do. But you're not going to have a hard time finding that here at Capital Factory. Somebody can really say, this term sheet looks right, these terms are good, or these are bad, or this is what you have to look out for. The entire point of mentorship, not just here at Capital Factory, but just general tech mentorship that we all know and love, is to help the entrepreneur see around corners, to help make your own mistakes instead of somebody else's. So I think that's going to be a pretty easy ask for somebody.
I would qualify. I agree in that I don't think it's hard to find somebody that can help you with that. There's a lot of people around here that can help you with that. I don't think it's talk to anybody about it. I think there's a lot of people who, I like to think that most people here know what they know and know what they don't know and won't give advice about stuff they don't know, but I think there's lots of people who like to think they're fundraising experts who aren't, or that they know that. I think, look, one of the biggest advantages of being part of this network is especially the network as a whole, sees a lot of term sheets. I'm pretty sure we see all of them. Like, I mean, we see almost every company. And so, you know, think about who you're asking. Like, you know, if you're asking somebody, I'd ask them, like, well, how many term sheets have you seen in the past year? And somebody's gonna say 3. Like, I don't know, like, I've probably seen
3 this week, today.
I don't know, 1,000, you know, like, right? And there's something in the middle, right? And you want someone who's seen a bunch of them. And then I think there's this is a place too where it's I would be hesitant to say, like, you want to go to your lawyers and ask them legal questions, but a very common misconception, no offense to my
I'm not a lawyer.
person representing a legal firm here,
Yeah.
but I do think a common misconception is to go to your lawyers for business advice about terms and things like that.
Unless they're business people, I totally agree, and I work for a whole group of lawyers, and they're smart and great, but.
And it's just, and some of it's even, they do often, might even have the perspective and that they see a lot of stuff, but lawyers are lawyers, not entrepreneurs. And they have it just, even just the way they're gonna think about it's different, and
Well,
so
I'd like to say
I
something
would
about
generally
that.
go to a, you know.
Lawyers are trained to protect, entrepreneurs are trained to produce.
Yeah.
And there's a huge gap between the two. And we were just talking about this earlier.
Yeah, there's also a big difference in like risk mitigation, I am a lawyer by background, so I can answer a little bit of that. Just a huge difference in terms of like risk mitigation, in terms of like what you're going to your lawyer to get out of it, and what you're asking around it. And, you know, typically too, you see there is what the advice you're gonna get from the lawyer is and what that perspective is, and then there's also how actually business runs and operates from it too. So yeah, there's terms that lawyers are gonna be pissed about or not wanna actually include, but the reality is, you know, like a step-in provision. So a big company says, hey, you know, you're small, we don't really know you, if there's a material breach, we wanna step in and run your company. You might have to acquiesce to that. Is some big company really gonna come in and take over you? No, they don't wanna do that. So, you know, there's the difference between what the legal advice is and what the reality of how it's actually run.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what do you see right now is attracting the most differentiated group or maybe disruptive group of people?
Blockchain.
Those could be.
I was gonna say machine learning and AI.
And do you
but,
have
yeah,
much of a crypto blockchain community here?
Big,
One of the strongest in the country.
yeah, big. Like, I think one of the blockchain meetups is something like 2,500 members, and they all show up to some party. I mean, it's wild here.
Okay.
We've got big Ethereum group, we've got big blockchain for health group, we've got a lot of blockchain.
There's a
stuff.
blockchain event happening almost every day.
Yeah.
You know, one of the biggest blockchain hedge funds came out of our accelerator, Multicoin Capital.
Big one.
Where we invested in a lot of blockchain companies. And there's a lot of other interesting stuff going on, but specifically you said disruptive, this kind of like disruptive interest, what's attracting, that's what's attracting those kinds of people.
Yeah.
AI is just attracting nerds.
That's my bad.
I love nerds, but not the same.
It's not, yeah, it doesn't have the same traction, customer wise.
I think AI is just what hasn't become the norm yet. You know, thermostat,
Other questions?
Yeah, like he was saying, like blockchain, so that's kind of what got me interested in technology, and you know, so what do you think about, you know, like when I think of like Bitcoin, I think of it as a network, not an exchange of value. You know, like Bitcoin is like a network where exchange of value is like an application on the Bitcoin network. Do you think it's gonna go away? Do you think it's just phase, like the exchange of value of the coin? Like, do you think that's gonna go away? Or?
Do I think it won't be used for currency? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like you think that, you know, they were saying, oh,
No.
Bitcoin's gonna go
I
up to
don't think it's gonna go away.
$100,000 or something.
No, I don't think it's gonna go away.
No, it's a,
I don't know that it's gonna be, I don't think it's gonna stay exactly the same forever either. I mean, I think it's gonna change, but no, I think there will be, these types of things will stay.
it's here to stay, or some derivative of it is here to stay.
The government won't be able to, like, they need to be able to control, like, they can only regulate it on the internet. Like, other than that, they can't regulate it.
I wouldn't wanna fight the US federal government,
Yeah.
the SEC or the IRS, but all signs point to they're gonna let some of it go somehow. Like, it's
Yeah.
not going away. They're not gonna come down with a van hammer and say you're out.
I don't think they can, right? Like,
No, no,
that's
no.
impossible.
I wouldn't wanna mess with the US federal government.
Right.
You know, they know what they're doing, whether you like it or not.
Right.
Last questions?
Your bullet two is a good one, so what do you recommend for kind of first steps after you've got an idea and a vision?
If you can prototype it, even if it's on PowerPoint or some sort of keynote, just like get it into a place where other people can see it, touch it, feel it, play with it, even as a prototype. And once again, and I keep hammering on this, get it in front of a customer. Get somebody to say, yeah, I'll buy that, or yes, I would pay for that if. From there, and I have a feeling, I'm not gonna try to predict what Josh says, but I have a feeling he's gonna say, go find a co-founder, because that's the hardest sale, because he usually always says it in one of these things. So, is that fair?
Those are all good ones. Yeah, I would have started with just go talk to as many customers as you can.
Yeah.
That's the next thing after that.
Say you were working with a VC who was new in town, and they wanted to.
VC's new?
Yeah, say the VC's just getting set up, where would they go?
Nobody is new to us. I mean, that's the point. But go ahead.
Where would you go to get a deal flow started, to get exposed to the most startups and that kind of thing?
You're sitting in it. And this is it.
Here in the capital.
You're at the center of gravity for every startup that comes into town, period, the end. There's other places to go. We talked about Open Coffee Club. We talked about South by. Every single major deal in town is gonna come through these doors at some point for either the program itself to the accelerator, through any of the events that they throw. What you do, 30 events a day minimum? Something crazy like that.
30,000.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, the fact is that somebody who has a Capital Factory t-shirt is gonna talk to that startup at some point during the period of time that those companies are here in Austin.
I love his answer, but of course that's not going to be a good enough answer for you if your job is to go find companies. So yeah, certainly I'd say broadening it a little bit. I mean, accelerators are a good deal flow, so I mean that's a good starting point because there's a lot of stuff coming out of there, and there's a bunch of different places to go. The Capital Factories are a great place to start, but there's a great TechStars program here. There's Mass Challenge has a big program. There's a bunch of other good things happening here too. You know, one of my places that my favorite like real mining spots would be just look at the most successful companies in town, and you'd expect to see the top engineers from there peeling out and starting new things. That's always a really good source, right? And so what I see from really successful VCs who have been doing it for a long time is that's part of the network they have, right? And so they funded this company, they watched it grow and get really big, and they know who the rock stars are at that company. So then once they sell that company, the next thing they do is just poach all the best people out of it to go start the next company that they want to go do, or they're pulling them to plug them into their, to be the head salesperson at the next startup they just funded, right? And it becomes, that's a talent pool they go fish out of, right? And so you can reverse engineer that a little bit, just go find the most successful companies in town, and those are gonna have some of the most successful people that are, primed to go do those things.
Any place that says demo day, go to demo days.
Are you a new VC in town?
I can't answer that. No, I'm being looked at by one.
Yeah.
Great. Well, show up to the demo days. The ones here at Capital Factory, we have quite a few of them. TechStars, as Josh mentioned, is tomorrow. I think Tarmac is next week. We've got DivInc. I mean, it's the easiest and best way to concentrate your time to see as many deals as possible quickly. But the truth is that you want to spend quality time, not just quantity time, by having lots and lots and lots of coffee with lots and lots of different entrepreneurs. That's the job.
The other thing I would do is I would also, there's certain angel investors who wouldn't be that hard to figure out that are like, they're the signal flares.
Okay.
And it's like, go buddy up to them.
Yeah, there's a half a dozen of them, as Josh mentioned.
And be like, get to know them, and be like, hey, let me know the next deal you guys do, like I want to look at them, right? And because again, they've got a network. A lot of them are CEOs, similar to what I was saying about the VCs. Like they've been the CEO of 2 or 3 companies. They've had a couple thousand people work for them, and they've got this big network of people that they're the first people they call when they go start their next new thing. Is you call the CEO of your last company to be your angel investor, they've got that network.
And there's a handful of people in this town that are first name onlys, FNOs. First name only is somebody who is a first name, like Josh. If somebody mentions the word Josh in Austin, it's Josh Baer. If somebody mentions the word Brett, it's Brett Hurt. If somebody mentions the word Arlo, it's Arlo Gilbert. Like there's a handful of people in this town And because Austin's such a big, small town, we get to do this. But as Josh mentioned, you buddy up to some of these guys that are very actively writing about and writing checks, writing about them in blogs and Medium and everything else, writing what they're doing and talking about their entrepreneurs and really promoting their entrepreneurs on things like Facebook and Twitter. It's very easy to triangulate who's doing what and how, and it can be done very quickly because Josh mentioned earlier, there's a lot of angels in this town, and that's true. I've personally identified about 330 angels that have just been either in and around an angel network, part of a judge group for something like Texas Longhorn Startup Groups and all that. But the fact is that there's very few people that actually write checks consistently, and the ones that do are the ones you want to talk to.
One more question?
What philanthropies would you suggest looking at?
Every startup is a nonprofit, so start with those.
What, you want to understand?
Philanthropies or non-for-profits that
Oh, well, I
think
say-
are worth looking at?
Looking for, I don't understand, for what?
Just, do you have any favorites in town that maybe
Entrepreneurs
Capital Factory
Foundation.
works with, or?
That are about entrepreneurship or just in general, just
Just in
fundraisers
general,
for
yeah, in Austin. Might be too broad, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Austin actually, I think, has more nonprofits per capita than any other place in the country.
That's true.
Like, there are more nonprofits here than anywhere else. But my recently favorite one is called Friends of the Children. It's a new group here in town, and they specifically go identify like literally the most at-risk kids out there that if I even tried to explain what they're going through, it just really put a damper on this whole event. And they literally just like assign someone to that person to be with them all the way through and to like for years to take them all the way through graduation. And it's a really awesome group that's got a lot of support behind it now, called Friends of the Children.
There's also one quick group called Amplify Austin, which is a full day of entrepreneurially minded philanthropy. So they have a full day of 30, 40, 50 different philanthropies that you give to on a single day, and that's a pretty good thing that Austin does. But that's not what Capital Factory is about. We like our nonprofits that look like startups.
Awesome. So, well, I think that's it for today. So thank you all for coming. Please give Mark a round of applause. Thanks for coming, Mark. I want to put a couple quick things. So for those of you, if you want to learn more about Capital Factory, either about becoming a member here or about how we fund companies or invest in them, Jamie, who's in the back, is one of our venture associates. So his job is identifying new companies and helping them figure out how to navigate this place and plug in. So he's a great person to talk to. There's a happy hour after this in the kitchen around the corner. That's the place that Mark said was the center of the center of the center of the lollipop. And so I think there's probably some food over there and some drinks, and we're gonna go over there. I'm not gonna, if you get in my way, I'm gonna walk right through you, so don't stop and try to talk to me here. I will talk to you over there, but if I don't do that, I'll just stay here the whole time. So I'm gonna go like right over there, and I don't know if Mark can come with me, and Jamie's gonna go over there. And if any of you guys wanna chat more, we'll be over there for a little bit. And like I said, we do this, it's kind of like every Tuesday, there's like a different thing happening here like this. Even the one like this, like next month, the first part's the same, but then there's like a different person up here answering questions.
Better looking.
And then the VC one, it's like it's one of the top VCs in town every month, a different VC up here. And so even if you just want to get to meet one of the VCs, like you'll be in a room like this big with one of the top VCs, and at the end of it, you can corner them and ask them a question or something. So anyway, thanks for coming. I will see you over in the kitchen over there.
Thank you.
Capital Factory, I don't know if you referred me over here, I don't know if I should put it as a reference on that.
Why not? Either that or me or anybody else.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Very good. Sounds good.
Thank you. Mark, you killed it, man.
Oh man, I appreciate that. Thanks for coming.
Are you going to Austin?
I'm gonna try, I have to hang out here, I've got a client, well, it's like a potential client that I promised I'd do them here. But, I gotta do that for a little bit, but yeah, I would hang out over there.
Yeah.
I would hang out, I would head out right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna be there
Start
for
with
a
those.
little bit and go right over there.
Good.
So,
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming.
yeah, Brent, I had a meeting with Brent, he's like, hey, let's come in, I'm like, alright, hey, I wanted you too, you let me know
Awesome.
about this earlier. I don't know if you know Brent, but he's in the process of creating a social impact fund.
Oh, no, you touched on that, but no,
Yeah, supposedly he was here to meet you today.
Oh. Well, I'm meeting, well, wait a minute, I don't know who I'm supposed to meet with. I'll figure it out. Yeah.
want me to take these outside, please?
Yes.
That's all.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Nice. You did a good job. The new box thing on there.
Yeah.
Looks good.
He's so excited.
Now he can go fix ACL that I've been telling him about for fucking a month.
Ryan is so cute. He just like genuinely loves, you know, like
Yeah.
what he does.
He's a geek.
He's such a geek. I love him. Alright,
You got that one.
I wasn't gonna carry both.
I
Or
don't
have
mind.
you
I mean, I
carry
do
both.
it all the time.
No, girl.
They're not heavy.
I know about heavy, bro.